It's out to deck. How you doing, guys?
Thank you.
It's like watching a film, but then all of a sudden we're in a film.
Roughly 5,000 metres above sea level. To give you an idea, that's about 700 metres on top of Kilimanjaro.
Greece is Circa, still going.
Hi Austin, how you doing?
Howdy.
How's it going there on your boats, on the adventure boats?
Well, you know, it's I don't know what to say. I'm just thrilled to be part of your event.
Cool, man. Thanks so much for coming on. Yeah, that was obviously Austin's trailer for his Adventure Travel Film Festival. Packed full of adventure. There's so much to unpack here, Austin, and talk about adventure travel films and your adventures and all those kind of things. But I thought we'd kind of kick off and sort of chat about the Adventure Travel Film Festival itself and where it all came about from. What led you to getting so many people together every year to watch these really cool independently made films?
The credit really for the film festival starting belongs to my wife, Lois Price. It was her idea, and the idea was brought up because we were getting sent through when the internet kind of got going, whatever that might be, in the mid-noughties, and everybody was really on the internet, and then at the same time editing software really had taken root so that normal people could finally afford a broadcast quality camera. They could afford editing software, and the amount of people that were doing cool things was huge. But then we reached this kind of critical mass with technology, and people, a lot of ordinary people started to make films, as well as, you know, in the old days it used to be just filmmakers on the whole. And then we got sent, Lois and I got sent a DVD from Chris Scott, of course, the man who coined the phrase adventure motorcycling, and a phenomenal human being. And he sent us this home-burned, you know, silvery DVD, just he's a man of few words sometimes, and just in a small envelope, and there was no enclosed, there's no letter or compliment slip or anything like that. And so we watched it, and it was a film by some Polish guys, and it was called Moto Siberia, and it was the first film I'd seen by this guy Maciek Słonowski, and it was one of the most incredible adventure travel films I'd ever seen. I would certainly say Maciek Słonowski is the world's leading adventure motorcyclist in terms of sheer scale of his achievements. He's also a gifted filmmaker. If he'd become a filmmaker in civilian life, so to speak, he's in fact an IT person. He would have been the Scorsese level of genius. But this film was the tipping point, Mondo Siberia, because this home-burned DVD, it was never going to get released. It was never going to be on television. This guy was Polish. It was Polish with English subtitles. It was completely homemade. It wasn't an independent film in that, an independent film means a real film, but it's just not financed by Sony or something. But this is a proper homemade film, and it was incredible. And then Lois said, "Oh, this is great." And then, hot on its heels, Chris Scott sent us another film called The Yenisei River Expedition, and it was about some Canadians and Australians, and I think one Kiwi, in a homemade raft, which was like a shed on an old lifeboat chassis, rowing the length of the Yenisei River that rises in Mongolia and estuarizes in the Arctic Ocean, and it obviously flows for most of its length through Russia. And it was an astonishing film, and it had been shot in 2001. These guys have been doing this row at exactly the same time that we'd been crossing Siberia on Terra Circa. So I had a real empathy for where they were and when they were. Their trip was south to north, ours was west to east. We must have crossed somewhere, hopefully within a few days. It was another amazing film, and I had no interest in rowing. I would never go and see a rowing film if anyone asked me about it. And I was flabbergasted at how exciting this film was, at the quality of the filmmaking, at the unpretentious, have a go, gung-ho, purity of these chaps as they did this incredible thing, very humble, and because it was also DIY, an utter absence of sponsors. I think they had some free vinyl canoe bags somewhere. So with the Motor Siberia film and then the Yenisei River Expedition film, that was really when the moment. And then a few other films were on the horizon that were kind of like just popping up. And Lois said we should show these films. We should have a festival. We should have a weekend or something and talk about this stuff, because we feared that if we didn't, no one else would.
Mm.
And dare I say it, our original contribution that we brought to the stage was that we were determined that it wasn't going to be just about motorbike travel, which is of course where Lois and I kind of come from, that place.
Yeah.
But there was too much stuff that was too impressive and too outstanding for us to dare to suggest that there should be just an adventure motorcycle film festival. And also, of course, man doth not live by bread alone. It was rather obvious that everyone's better served if we see the diversity of the films that are coming from essentially completely different parts of a community that doesn't even know it's a community.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. And that's grown into, you've kind of brought that community together into a little part of it anyway in the UK, into a field once a year to watch all these films and chat about it. It's very cool. I believe it's been going on for quite a long time now. It must have changed quite a lot since then over the years and developed, and must have had quite a lot of different kind of films. How has this kind of developed in that time? Well,
it started off with 250 of us. We just invited everybody that we knew, and Facebook. This was 10 years ago, so Facebook wasn't quite as big as it is now, and all that kind of thing. But we just put the word out and said, look, we're trying something new. We've got this funny collection of films that you've never heard of, and so that's another problem that you have when you run an adventure travel film festival. Is if somebody says, "Oh, what's on?" What's there going to be? You have to present them with a load of things that they've never heard of. Yeah. And so then you have this pressure, which I enjoy as a curator, to make sure that you present to the audience stuff that you can vouch for, and you can stand in front of the audience before every film and say, I think this film is important because. And then also over the years, what's happened is we've got our website going, sort of thing, and it's got better and better. And then we got one of our friends, Yasha Warren, to kind of become the full-time festival coordinator. She's an IT wizard and a website builder, so she made the website even better, and it got a bit slicker. And then we got a sponsor, and that was like, huge. We went out for dinner that night, and so that was great. Only a medium level sponsor, in case you think we're driving around in Rolls Royces. And then we had to move venue after the second year. Then we did it in this girls' boarding school at Sherborne, and that was really a quick thing, a really fascinating experience to approach venues cold. So this would be back in something like 2012. Approaching venues and saying, hello, we run a thing called the Adventure Travel Film Festival. We've been doing it in Devon. Now we need to do it somewhere a bit bigger that could probably hold 600 people. And boarding schools in the holidays were excellent candidates to hold the event. Lots of room for camping, toilets, showers, obviously, often a dining room. Well, obviously a dining room, and as a slimming school, and a dining room, and then probably quite a few theatres and internal projection venues, completely fitted out with projectors and PAs and stuff like that, and chairs. And that was the list of things that we needed. And a school who's got all of that stuff, and loosely speaking, isn't really using it in the holidays, although they are actually. But it was amazing to be approaching schools, and loads of them would not reply to the approach, and then eventually you'd be told, no, a festival, no, I don't think we're, a what, an adventure, I remember easily 2/3, 3/4 of the responses were very negative.
Really?
They didn't like the sound of adventure. The word festival just conjured up the idea of everyone being off their face on ketamine or whatever, and so you were starting the negotiation, having to apologise and explain yourself. And of course, when you've got a festival that no one's heard of, if it was a book festival, it'd be fine. Easy. Yeah, that'd be easy. They'd love, they'd crawl across broken glass to get to you. But so it was very, very difficult and very humbling. It was, dare I say, it was trying to find a venue and organise the film festival was miles harder than doing any of the trips around the world that I've ever done.
Right.
Miles harder.
That's quite a statement.
Yeah. God, the stress and the knockbacks. So many knockbacks. And but I had a buddy who was on Mondo Enduro, a guy called Bill Penty, and his brother Chaz Penty was on Mondo Enduro as well. And at that stage, he was the deputy head of this girls' boarding school in Sherborne in Dorset. And I was kind of doing the rounds and visiting places. And I went to visit a school called Weston Burt, which is a massive girls' boarding school in an old stately home. And I stayed with Bill the night before, and I had like 3 or 4 knockbacks. And he just sort of casually said, "Oh, if you don't really get a pull anywhere, come to us." And I said, "Oh, great." And suddenly, somebody had thrown me a bone.
Yeah.
And we got a load more rejections. And then Weston Burt wanted, for the weekend, Weston Burt, I remember, wanted £27,000 as the starting fee for the dry hire, with the possibility that they wouldn't let us camp there.
Wow.
So amazing how different people presented you with completely wildly different prices of what they thought their property was worth. So that was out of the question, unless the tickets were going to be £1,000 each, something like that, So it was a long journey, but Lois and I thought these films are important. And I'll only say this once, but I kind of thought, well, if we don't show some of these films, that no one's going to show them. No one's going to, the people who did these trips are going to rent a village hall where they live, fill it with their friends and family and their mums and dads, and they'll have 100 people watch it one night. But they're not going to be having, real festivals, asking them, showing it to strangers, which is, I think, what it's all about. And I also thought it was very important that there's something about the funny way that television works that means that the best stuff that's being made is not necessarily on television, which seems counterintuitive. You would like to think that the fastest sprinter in the world is winning the 100 meters at the Olympics. You'd like to think that the best rugby team in the world is winning the World Cup, the Rugby World Cup. And you'd like to think that the most expensive restaurant in the world is serving the best food. But with films and television, you don't get that. TV isn't the place where the best films and shows are what's the word, are stored or are showcased. I think maybe they used to be,
not anymore.
So dare I say it, we stepped up to the plate, and somebody had to create a situation where this incredible stuff got shown. So that was the idea, is that we created our own TV channel, adventure TV channel, and it broadcast for one weekend a year. And you had to actually come and sit in front of the broadcast. You couldn't get it at home.
But it worked, definitely.
It worked. And it grew year on year. We had people come from all over Europe to attend it. And it was incredible. And it still is incredible. I mean, we had a break last year because we changed venue, and then we were at Mill Hill School, and it was very difficult trying to find a new venue. It was totally back to square one, gutted. And then, of course, this year the virus has knocked us out. And we've all the films are ready, curated, all the clearances. We've got 46 films that we're showing at the next one, which was meant to be in 2 weeks, but it's now going to be in 54 weeks.
A bit more time to get stuff arranged then.
Well, no, it is all right. It's all booked. Everything's arranged. It is arranged. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to initiate launch sequence now.
So let's talk about the films, I suppose, in general, Austin. So you've been obviously doing this for years. I imagine you could make an argument that it's now it's easier to make a film than it ever has been, because you've got things like drones and stuff, you can just buy them now and all this stuff. How has it changed in your experience, in your sort of time as an adventure travel filmmaker and sort of watching so many adventure travel films over time? And has it changed for the better? Or
But it's an excellent question, Reese. Well done.
thank you.
You've always been.
He's been
You've
writing
always
that
been.
down all day.
You've always been my favourite.
Right, I'm gone.
It's like the one. It's totally snakes and ladders, in my opinion. It's one step forward, or it's up the ladder, down the snake. So 20 years ago, or when we did Mondo and Enduro 25 years ago, you couldn't get a camera, and then suddenly the Sony VX1 came out, which was the first broadcast quality camera that you could buy, so to speak, in the high street. And that was a massive step forward, but you still couldn't edit anything you shot without going to a professional editing suite in central London that even back then was 400 quid a day. So now the needle has moved to the other side, the pendulum swung the other way. Everybody can edit. Everybody's shooting phenomenal quality footage on their phones. But what's also happened in that time is that loads more people have had the opportunity to make a film, and that means, and we're going to see it tonight with Sarah Moshman's Losing Sight of Shore. So that means that the bar has inevitably been raised. You know that adage that in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. So now, so 22 years ago when we shot Mondo Enduro, no, 25 years ago when we shot Mondo Enduro, all we shot was us going around the world with no other special story to it. Some goons go on holiday, and a few things go right and a few things go wrong. And that was it, and that was the show, and that ended up on television. And you could never do that nowadays. Just go off on the same route that we did, and point a camera at what was happening and get that on Discovery.
No.
Discovery Europe, dubbed into 14 languages and watched by 70 million people. That would never happen. It would have to be, and so then you get something like Losing Sight of Shore, which is an excellent kind of case study for. There's a whole adventure travel documentary film school lecture to be had showing my film Mondo Enduro, and then 25 years later, something like Losing Sight of Shore. Two enormous obvious differences: the scale of the boldness of the project. The projects are completely different. So Losing Sight of Shore is epic in its undertaking, but it's also, in terms of production values, 100 times better than Mondo Enduro. 100, every single possible thing that could have been done better is better, and that shows you where the bar is now.
Yeah.
And so it's great. Yeah, sure. Everyone says, "Oh, great! I've got a GoPro and I've got a phone and I've got editing software and I've got YouTube. Now I'm a filmmaker." Well, you could knock yourself out, make your film, but you're up against things like Losing Sight of Shore now. 25 years ago, we weren't up against that. We were up against really, really straightforward, far less dramatic and far less amazing films and projects. So it's easier to make a film, harder to make a good film.
So if you're a young Austin Vince now and you want to be a filmmaker, you want to make the best film out there, I'm looking at Reese here. What kind of top tips would you have for someone who's got a GoPro, who can shoot 4K? How do you make a good film? Like a couple of get that notebook out, mate.
The first simple rule is which is the bitterest pill to swallow. It's the hardest thing. Is that, just imagine if you were, to make the analogy with cooking, if you were going to cook somebody a meal, there's only really one criteria it's got to fulfill. It's got to be nice, isn't it? It's got to be nice and tasty. It's got to be enjoyable to eat. And that's the same with making a film. You can go to film school all you like. You can read every book in the world. You can use a million techniques, but above all else, whoever you are, from Martin Scorsese to Sarah Moshman down to somebody who's watching this who's 14 years old and only owns a phone and iMovies or whatever it's called, some editing software. the pressure is still on you to simply make a film that is entertaining and interesting. That's all you've got to do.
Yeah,
Now
makes it so easy.
it's amazing how many people can make, of course, obsess about the equipment and all sorts of gimmicks and details, forgetting that the actual film has got to be interesting and entertaining. And if it's not that, it doesn't matter what you've done right. If I could sit you through 20, well, actually, I could sit you through 100 films that I've just rejected for this year's Adventure Travel Film Festival, and of that 100, at least 50 were immaculately produced. They were like watching television programs, but they were boring.
Right. Yeah, so that's pretty crucial, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's pretty crucial. So one question then, because we're being greedy. So one question from the live feed here, Austin, we've got, says, over the last 2 years, what's your favourite adventure film? If someone wants to go and hunt out an adventure film, what's the best one that Austin thinks from the last 2 years?
That is like asking me what my favorite, asking somebody who their favorite child is. That's me, and that's me as an extremely prolific Irish person with about 32 children. So I couldn't answer what's my favorite. I wouldn't be prepared to commit to one desert island adventure travel film. So I'm going to be naughty and just tell you about five films that are essentially very different, all of which have been shown at our festival, and each of which is equally legendary. So, for example, Ollie Hunter-Smart's Road to Independence, which I think you had on the last thing, I think that's literally a masterpiece. Knockout. Dugout, made by Ben Sad and James Trundle, made about 4 years ago, going to the jungle, cutting down a tree, making a kayak canoe out of it. Outstanding. Knockout. Fabulous. Legion Sight of Shore coming up now. That's a great choice. Outstanding. Fabulous. Knockout. Vintage films. I absolutely loved a film that we've just discovered that nobody has ever seen, basically, of these two guys going around the world in 1955 in a Land Rover, making their own nature documentary, shooting it on color 16mm film for a natural history museum in Toronto. It's one of the most perfect pieces of travel and natural history filmmaking I've ever seen in my life, and it's mind-blowing. And then on another tack, something like Ed March's C90 Adventures, Malaysia to UK, goofy, irreverent, ridiculous, low budget, DIY, subversive. Count me in. I'll show that, you bet.
Cool.
Okay then, guys, nice one. So that was obviously the chat we had with Austin Vince at the July film night. I think, well, I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did at the time. Super cool guy. Great to have a chat about adventure travel through the years and that sort of stuff, and highlight a couple of his favourite adventure travel films. He really knows his stuff. You may also notice that I'm here by myself for this very quick Q&A. Bit weird, really. It's usually I can rely on Matt to do some of the talk, but I can't this time round. He's he can't be here for this particular thing, so I said no worries, I'll be the sidecar guy just for this right now. Next week we are going to bring you back the chat we had with Brit on a Bike at the Armchair Adventure Festival from the Friday evening. For those who don't know, Jack, Brit on a Bike, is bidding to become the youngest person to ride around the world by motorcycle, and he was stopped in his tracks at the time due to COVID in Peru. So it'll be quite interesting to, what we'll do, we'll share you the chat we had with Jack, and maybe I'll reach out to him before then and see how he's getting on, so we can give you a bit of an update as well. And I'm pretty sure Matt will be back as well, so no need to worry. So yeah, that was Austin Vince. Next week is Jack, Brit on a Bike. Obviously, if you want to catch up right now as you're watching this, you can go to our Patreon page, £1, and you'll be able to watch our chat we had with Brit on a Bike at the time and find out how he's getting on right now, if he's continued his trip, if he had to come home because of COVID, if he's made it around the world, who knows? That's part of the fun. So yeah, cheers guys, enjoy.